Ой, я такой. Так думаю, да? Наверное, да, нормально начнется. Все хорошее у всех, в каждом из нас. И все, звери тоже не такие уж плохие, если подумать. У них конкуренция очень высокая. У нас тоже, что ли, так? Надо, значит, Настаивать. Просто себе помимо всего прочего. Потом, может, они на работу такие на колени стали. Ой, тогда приходи. Не, ну это я не в этом смысле. Я просто, да, понимаете, я просто. Ну, наверное, как-то по-другому. Даже Денис Мацуев пришел, то есть, как бы, да, понимаю. Ну, хотя хрен его знает, да. Ну, нет, значит, возьмет, все, да. Ну, да. Это что такое, а? Ромео. Курс Бэтмен. Что ты делаешь? Да, понятно. А, это что? Блин. Муратович. Ха-ха-ха. Ну, нормально играет. Ну, почему? Да наоборот. Ну, наоборот. Да наоборот, да. Вот это есть. Только не надо играть там. Да надо. Ну, наоборот, точно. Ну что ты от меня хочешь? Так мне же... Вот это он имеет в виду. Не знаю, не особенно. Ну да. Ну, красиво. Много всего. Наоборот, это наоборот. Это ты какой-то... Ну и что? Ну это и есть это. Ну вот наоборот, да. Вот это, да нет. Наоборот, нет. А что, мне работу дают там, да, наоборот. Да наоборот, становится спокойно. Ну вот это и есть на самом деле, да. Вот это и на самом деле. Да. Ну нет, не возьму тогда, да, вот это и было самое. Ну вот это и было самое. Вот это и да, наоборот, нет, ничего, все то же самое, что ли? Вот это и было на самом деле. Это не исключено. Ну да. Ну да. Ну что, плохо относиться к себе, да. Да мне вообще похер, я бы сейчас просто, да, я как бы, ладно, я не знаю. культ. Культ. Слушаю вас, да? Да, сейчас секунду. Да, слушаю, да. Внимание. Да, что-то я посмотрел, да. Ага. Ну пока сложно, пока все еще. Ну, как бы, я потом, может, посмотрю, потом, ладно? Спасибо большое.
А почему именно вот эта визуализация, чем она изначально так интересовала?
Интерес просто был, интерес. Ну ладно, простите, я потом посмотрю вас. Ладно, спасибо.
Хорошо. Спасибо за обратную связь. Вам хорошего дня.
Спасибо. Вот это есть, чтобы тебе делать, конечно, делать, да, в игре, да. Очень нравится, очень нравится. Привет. Привет. Вот это и было самое. единственное самое. Квартиры можно спокойно выходить, когда у тебя 1050 заработка в месяц. В год крыша в год. А, ну это ваше. 50 тысяч. То как бы зачем технику покупать? Ну, то есть как бы с целью там знакомства, расширения. Если расширяешь, то там это не важно. Типа тест. Пианист. Работаешь, а почему хорошо, а почему плохо стало, смотри. То есть это просто, да. А как, значит, ты можешь, как лучше, как хуже можешь? Да, понимаете, я просто... Ну я уж, нет. Так когда твоя жизнь, да, вот если ты ничего не делаешь, голову свою не задачу, это же вообще, да. Это потому что все это самое, в идеале у меня, скажу. Не знаю, в Африке вот как думаешь? Все ужасно. Чё? Кто там шумит? Перестраховщик, я такой, видимо, да, перестраховался.
Hallo, liebe Anlegerinnen und Anleger. Ja, ich bin es, Harry Weinfurt. Keine Sorgen, Sie sollen heute keine Preise erraten. Ich will Ihnen auch nichts verkaufen, ganz im Gegenteil. Heute will ich
Hey people, it's Kevin Castro here at Piano. Today we're going to be talking about Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Some may consider this song to be pretty boring, but luckily we have the piano here and it's super versatile. So we're going to try a bunch of different genres here and try to spruce it up a little bit, see if we can give it a little bit more spice. Alright, so the most basic form of this song, Twinkle Twinkle, is going to sound something like this. So you still got your C chord, your F, and that G chord, we're making it a dominant 7 in that original. So we're going to keep that harmony for the most part in all these other genres, but let's see how we can stylistically change things on the piano. Alright, so with this jazz version, one of the things I'm doing right off the bat is I'm setting off the time with a little bit of a walking bass line. And so that progression that I'm doing, I'm tackling the 1, the major 6 chord, an A7, I'm playing a flat 9, make it a little bit jazzier. D minor 9 in this case, or you can do a D minor 7. Then to G, E minor, A, D minor, G. So this is a really common turnaround in jazz where you're going 1 to the 6, to the 2, to the 5, then the 3, then the 6, then 2, 5. And you'll notice I'm just doing approach tones every time, going 1, semitone up, semitone down, then go up. You can do 2. And then in the background, I'm just kind of hitting some chords. And then I kind of really jump into the song. The thing with jazz is you're really going to want to have that kind of swing 8th notes going the whole time. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. So they're not as 1 and 2 and 3, 4, like as if Mozart were to play it like. Have a little bit more swing, in the melody there. So that's a few things of what's going to really make this a little bit jazzier when you're playing it. Otherwise, for the most part, I was keeping the same basic melody with the chord. So C chord, F chord, to that G7, and then C, C, F chord, C, G, C, and then you can even do a little 2-5-1 at the end, which is what I did. D minor to G7. 2-5-1s are what jazz is all about. right, so there was a little bit of old school rock and roll for you guys there. So with this kind of genre in particular, I'm doing a lot of this kind of drive-in bass, like just kind of moving between the C and G and that C and the A right here. And whatever my shells are, so in C I'm doing C and G, moving up to the A, the sixth. F and C, I'll be moving up to the D. When I play a G chord, G and D, move up to the E. So my left hand's doing. Just kind of keeping that bass kind of moving that whole time. My right hand, I'm doing a lot of little slides there. Rock and roll, especially on the piano, they really like that kind of high stuff. That's really repetitive, really fast. And if you can manage to throw any either blues scales or pentatonic, rock and rolls and blues are very synonymous on the piano. So you can, if you guys have learned that C major pentatonic scale or the A minor blues scale, either one of those would kind of be fine to throw some little fills in. Pretty much doing that the entire song, and at the very end, I'm kind of just doing this big G7 chord into C dominant 7, a very kind of bluesy rock and roll type chord. And on the way back down, all this is that C, D, E flat, E, G, and A. So people like to call that the blues scale and A minor, or that C major pentatonic scale there with that little slide with that flat 3. And you can do any kind of run and then end on a big C chord at the very top.
Нет, ну да, то есть как бы фортепиано только, аккомпаниатор. Ну да, ну что теперь сделаешь, так понимаете? Ну чё? Ну-ка, есть у нас такое. Бремянить. Так, где? Эй, где? Что-то не понял, где? Ну чего? Да на, где-то здесь. Что, сайт не работает, что ли? Что такое? Чего он не реагирует?
And that is rock and roll.
Специально для меня убрали, чтобы не А это плохо, что ли, что люди могут отправлять свои резюме, заявки своих, да? Хорошо. Деньги там, круто.
Alright, so the bossa nova is just the Latin jazz version. So what we're doing, a lot of this comes from the left hand where I'm going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... So the main chords are C, F, and G. So the rule of thumb is you're going to take the first note of the chord and the fifth note of the chord to do that pattern. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4. And you just kind of keep going through this, through all the chords.
И что это такое вообще?
The thing that I did every now and then was I would do a little passing tone, so I might do something like this. So I do that little F sharp to go back down.
Всплывающий спарк.
So those are allowed as well, as long as you land right on beat where you're supposed to. On the right hand, the thing about bossa nova is they typically don't just play like regular major chords. Because it's a jazz genre, you're gonna try and make it a little bit jazzier by adding some sort of harmony in there. So that I typically play at C major 7, F major 7,
Ну что, еще есть?
between F major 7, C major 7, and then that G I just kind of kept dominant. But if you really wanted to get bossa-y, bossa is really like the flat 9 chord, so you could even do this. I didn't do that in the song, but that would sound even cooler. Stuff like that. So all that together, at the very end of this song, I did another jazz progression, kind of like I did in the jazz version, where I went from D minor to G7, and it on C major 7, and just kind of arpeggiated that. Alright, so I was doing a little bit of ragtime in this one. So, with ragtime piano, this is actually a pretty difficult style where whatever the chord is, you want to hit the bass note. You can either do it just a single bass note or an octave like I was doing. And then hit the chord F, F chord, low C, C chord, F, F chord, C, C chord, G, G7, C. So that is what your left hand pattern has to be doing for pretty much that whole time. My right hand, to kind of give it this kind of old western / ragtime kind of feel, is I'm doing a lot of slips. So if you're not sure what slips are when you go to hit like a C major chord and you kind of slip on that E flat. Same with on an F chord, same thing with an A flat, or if you're playing G chord, same thing with that B flat. So I'm doing a lot of those slips. And a nice little thing if you can add in there, it's that little trill between E and G. If your pinky's not strong enough yet, you can do it between fingers 2 and 3, but try to do it between your thumb and your pinky so you can have your thumb available to hit the C note. At the end of this one, I did a kind of little fancy ending when going from C to B flat to F over A to F minor over A flat, then a nice little G chord, and then a big, that same blues scale or pentatonic scale. And then I did a nice chord called D flat 13 to a C 13. I might have played C7 in the actual track, but either one of these two will work. And I did a nice big arpeggio. That 13, in case you want to try it out, it's a cool ending. F, B flat, B natural, E flat over D flat. And then everything moves down a semitone to get to that C.
Привет, я Игорь Кравцов, коммерческий директор компании Cloud Payments. У нас нет клиентов, у нас есть партнеры. Мы не продаем, а презентуем и делимся своей...
Give it a shot. All right, so this ballad version, I'm doing a couple of different things here. Where the first one is that left hand, I'm really trying to do these arpeggios on whatever chord is being played at the moment. So if it's a C chord, I'm doing the C, G, C, D, E. I might even be moving around with those inner voices while I'm playing the melody, kind of like. So those inner voices, after you finish it, with this, you kind of have to be careful that you don't overplay, because it is possible to just have, like, it's possible to play too much. So with this one, you have to be really sure that you're playing not just to play the notes, but because it sounds really pretty. My right hand is playing the melody pretty close to the beginning. I'm doing some 6 a lot of the time. So that interval of a 6 is always a really, really nice technique that you can do on the piano. And if you even add these 2 middle notes, you're gonna have a nice chord all the way down. Kind of like that.
Вот же город район.
Kind of change the melody up a little bit there.
Что такое-то вообще?
This ending I did, some people call it the Super Bowl ending. It's when you go to the flat 6 chord, A flat major to B flat, and then I ended on that C major 7 again, and did a nice little arpeggio up. There you go. Now you can play a beautiful version, and this just goes to show how versatile the piano is, that you can take that same melody and play it in a bunch of different ways, and each way is beautiful in its own way. All right, so there you have it. There's a bunch of different styles and how you can play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and you can do that to pretty much any song. Apply these same techniques. It can be any kind of boring old song. I was gonna say Ba Ba Black Sheep, but I'm pretty sure that is the same song as Twinkle Twinkle. Same with the ABCs. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Yep, it is. All right, so you can take any other, quote unquote boring song and really spice it up just by adding a couple of these techniques. So let me know, what was your favorite one? Did you have a favorite? Do you like the rock and roll one? Did you like more of the bossa, the more smooth one? Let me know in the comments below, and yeah, have fun trying it out. Есть несколько, там просто аккомпаниаторы, бывает такое тоже, да? Не функционирует. Вот это он имеет в виду.
And these are just patterns which you precede the chord tone with. It's like working backwards. It adds on some notes. And then once you've played that, you usually resort to chord tone soloing. How's it going, guys? Julian Bradley here from jazztutorial.com, and in today's jazz piano lesson we're going to focus on improvisation. So improvisation is probably the most intimidating thing about learning jazz, but in this lesson I'm going to try and break it down into a series of techniques which will be much less intimidating, and there is honestly going to be a ton of information in this lesson. So I hope you really enjoy these techniques. With that said, we're going to get straight in. So first of all, how should you practice improvisation? Well, my advice is that you keep things really simple, that you start in one key, and we're going to take the 2-5-1 in C major. That's going to be a D minor 7 chord, going to a G dominant 7 chord, ending on a C major 7 chord. So that's the major 2-5-1 in the key of C major. And most jazz songs are made up of this major 2-5-1, just played in different keys. Sometimes you get the full 3 chords, other times you just get a 2-5, other times you'll just get a 5-1. But most jazz songs, their structure is based around the 2-5-1. So for that reason, it makes most sense to practice our improvisation over the 2-5-1. Unless you have any better ideas, I recommend you just start by practicing over the 2-5-1, and we're going to hold things still within the key of C major. Holding things still in one key is a very good idea when it comes to anything composition related, because it helps you to keep track of which ideas you've already experimented with and which ideas you haven't explored yet. So we're going to take the 2-5-1 in C major, and one variation is sometimes I make it a 2-5-1-6, because this chord progression actually loops around on itself. So you go 2-5-1, and then you go to an A dominant 7 chord, and that's the 6th chord, which resolves back down a 5th to the 2 chord. So the 2-5-1 6th chord progression is nice for practice because it loops back around on itself. So you might want to do 2-5-1-6, 2-5-1. You can keep repeating that. So 2-5-1-6, and then you could go 2-5-1. Then you'd end on the 1 chord. And also when you practice improvisation, have sheet music handy which you can write down your best ideas with. You don't have to remember all of this stuff. You want to explore, but you want to write down your best ideas because you might want to come back and really ingrain some of those best ideas later. Okay, so my next recommendation is to focus on chord tone soloing. So chord tones are the root 3rd, 5th and 7th of the chord. So if you have a C major 7 chord, then the chord tones are going to be C, E, G and B. Or if you had a C minor 7 chord, the chord tones would be different. They would be C, E flat, G, B flat. Or if you had a C dominant 7 chord tones would be, that's right, C, E, the major 3rd, G, the 5th, and B flat, the minor 7th. And I would say about 80% of jazz piano improvisation is focused around the chord tones. So each time the chord changes, our chord tones will change as well. So our notes in our solo will naturally change. So let's take a 2-5-1 in C major. For the D minor 7, which 4 notes will we use? That's right, D, F, A and C. The root 3rd, 5th and 7th of D minor 7. For G dominant 7, we'll use G, B, D and F. And for C major 7, we'll use C, E, G and B. And so on. Now I'm actually going to add one more note, which is the 9th. Even though the 9th isn't really considered a chord tone, it's more of the extended harmony. It is still an excellent note to add into this technique. So then you're actually using the root 3rd, 5th, 7th and 9th of every single chord. And in pretty much every case it's going to be a natural 9th. So for C major 7 you would play C, E, G, B and add a major 9th. Just count up a whole step from the root to find the 9th. If it was a minor 7 chord, same 9th. And for a dominant 7 chord, same 9th. If you're feeling more advanced, then you can do a flat 9, that's also nice. But in most cases, I'm using a natural 9th. So let's apply this to our 2-5-1. 5 notes over D minor 7 are going to be D, F, A, C, and E. then we'll go to G dominant 7. Our 5 notes are going to be G, B, D, F and
Ну просто
A.
даже, ну наоборот, да, да. Да я уже находился, вот мне уже надоело. Что даже рассказывать об этом? Не, где-то в детстве так и говорят, вам только нужен этот. Типа сиди, играй там свои штучки, а все остальное там все сами сделано. Ну на полчаса в день приехал, там часто, ну, всяко бывает. Ну, кстати. Ладно. Сам. Да, вот это я могу понять. Такой же мир, что я Эй, benchmark. Alright, man. Oops. Знаешь, у меня какой бизнес? Смеялся, решил, хотя нет вообще. Ну да. Ладно. Отлично. Ладно. Не пьет шампанского, как говорится, да? Ты что ты будешь, ты туда придешь так и все запросто, что поняла тебя просто. Да, она поняла. Почти что да. Запросто, не запросто, но на то оно как бы...
A. Then over C major 7, our 5 notes are going to be C, E, G, B and D. So that's really nice. We get 5 notes over each chord. And then just to be thorough, if we do a 2, 5, 1, 6 and we have this A dominant 7 chord, we're going to have A, we're going to have C sharp, we're going to have E and G. And this is actually a chord where I would like to play a flat 9, B flat. It just sounds better in this context. The 2, 5, 1, 6. I would use a flat 9 in this context. You can do the natural 9 as well, but I tend to enjoy this flat 9 in this case. So this is the sound of chord tone soloing, and the nice thing about it is it uses the same brain work which you've already done to find your left hand chords. So if you're playing a D minor 7, well, you've already figured out the notes in your left hand, so it doesn't really require any more to play those same notes in your right hand. It's the same brain work, so once you've figured out the notes for your left hand,
понимает.
You're using those same notes in your right hand.
Как это не прошло? То есть как это не прошло?
Okay, so next we're going to look at approach patterns. Now, approach patterns go perfectly with chord tone soloing. And what an approach pattern is it's a melodic shape which precedes usually a chord tone. So say we have this D minor 7 chord, we can precede the root 3rd, 5th and 7th with a whole series of approach patterns. Now, the most simple and probably most effective approach pattern I can show you is called the half step below approach. So we're going to precede any of these chord tones with a half step below. So C sharp can precede D, F can be preceded by E, A can be preceded by G sharp, and C can be preceded by B natural. Then we go to G dominant 7, we can do the same again. Take any of the chord tones and you can precede these with a half step below. And again, for C major 7, just take the chord tones, C, E, G, B, and you can precede any of these notes with a half step below. So C can be preceded by B, E natural can be preceded by E flat, G can be preceded by F sharp, and B natural can be preceded by B flat. Now, you've probably noticed that some of these approach patterns take you out of key. They take you chromatically out with this C sharp, this G sharp, this E flat, this B flat. But in this context, that is absolutely fine. These half-step below approaches actually sound really sophisticated, especially when they take you out of scale. So the half step below approach pattern is the place I would start. That's my probably favorite approach pattern. It's just so simple, it's not tricky to do. Again, you're just finding the chord tones and then you're preceding any of those chord tones with a half step below. But there are all sorts of other approach patterns. You can do what's called a chord scale above approach, where you take any of these chord tones and you approach them from the note above. However, in this case, you actually have to be aware of which scale you're in. So if we're playing a 2-5-1 in C major, then over all 3 chords you can play C major scale, because all 3 chords are taken from C major scale. So if you want to do chord scale above, you would approach any of these notes with the note from the scale that's above. So it's going to be all of the white notes in this case. And then there are other approach patterns where they really get more sophisticated in working backwards from a chord tone and playing the surrounding notes. You get sort of patterns like this. So say we're targeting D here, above a D minor 7. There's all sorts of patterns that you hear. And really the sky is the limit. So these are actually called enclosures, when you get these neighbouring notes which form a pattern around your target note, which is usually going to be a chord tone. And these are just patterns which you precede the chord tone with. It's like working backwards, it adds on some notes. And then once you've played that, you usually resort to chord tone soloing. Now to go with this lesson, I've actually put together some sheet music where I've notated some of my favourite licks over the 251 and the 251-6. I've annotated all of the techniques so you can really understand what I'm doing. Plus I'll include some techniques which we probably won't have time for in this lesson. So to download that sheet music for free, just click on the link below. So my favourite approach pattern which I recommend you start with is the half step below approach. Go away, practice the chord tone soloing and practice preceding some of these notes with a half step below. And a little detail on that, it's good to place the chord tones on the down beats, the strong beats, so the beats 1, 2, 3, 4. And then usually you're trying to put the approach notes on the off beats, so the 1 and, the 2 and, the 3 and. So that way you're playing the sort of dissonant notes on the weaker beats, the off beats, the 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, 4 and. Okay, so next let's talk about rhythm. Now most of the time in improvisation you're mostly playing eighth notes. 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, 4 and.
Знаешь, отказать такие, это я писал, если это есть.
So that's going to be most of the solo. Now to keep things interesting you need to add some variety to your rhythms. One of the easiest ways you can do this is to add a triplet to each line. A triplet is where instead of playing 2 eighth notes per beat, you're going to play 3 triplet eighth notes in the same space. So instead of playing 1, 2, you're going to play 1, 2, 3. So if I play the chord on 1 and then I start on the second beat, I'm going to play 1, 2, 3, and it's going to be a triplet. So 1, 2, on the beat 2 I'm playing triplets. So I'm trying to add a triplet to each line. The triplet goes well at the beginning of the line, or it sounds good in the middle of lines. So there I placed the triplet in the middle of the line. Started with just eighth notes, but there I played a triplet, 1, 2, 3. And then you go back to eighth notes. So my next improvisation tip is to try and mimic speech. That's what improvisation is. It's like small talk, and it's designed to sound a lot like us talking. So when we have conversations, we talk for a while. Then we take breaks. Why do we take breaks? So that we can take a breath. You need to have breaths in your improvisation. You don't want to just keep playing eighth notes forever. And what happens after we take a breath? Usually when we start the next sentence, we change register. So if we've ended down here, when we start the next phrase, we might start in a different register. This, then we take a breath, we might start our next phrase by coming down an octave, we'll take a breath, then I'll start my next phrase up an octave. So this is a simple trick you can do. It sounds very authentic, sounds natural because it mimics speech, but when you finish a line, take a breath and then change octave, go up an octave, and start your next line up here. Then you take a breath and change octave, either by going up or going down. So when I'm improvising, that's one of the things I'm thinking about. When I end a line down here, it's almost natural for me to jump up the octave and start my next line up. Now another good principle to use in your improvisation is to end on resolved.
Ну, я, наверное, я точно не знаю, наверное. Но Шопен, наверное, не играет, наоборот, идет наоборот. Ну, да, то есть...
Notes, in particular to end your lines on the root third or fifth of the chord. So if you have a D minor 7 chord and you're about to end your line, try to end it on D, F or A. It's not a rule, but it's a good guideline. It sounds more confident most of the time if you end a line on one of these notes, whichever way you want to do it. And that sounds more confident usually than ending a line on the 4th, or the 6th, or the 9th, or even the 7th. So that's not a rule, it's just a guideline, but again it mimics speech because usually when we talk we end our sentences sounding resolved. So C major 7, ending on the root, or I could go. Any of these three notes is a good note to end your improvised lines on. Now to help you even more with improvisation, I've notated a whole series of jazz piano licks and lines which I've written over the 251 and the 251-6. So if you like these sorts of techniques which I'm using, well, I've notated a whole series of them. You can download this sheet music for free just by clicking on the link below, and you can print it out, take it to the piano today and really work through things slowly so that you can ingrain these techniques. Now, if this is the first video of mine you've seen, make sure you don't miss out on future videos by subscribing to my channel. And with that said, I'm going to handpick the next video up here so you can continue watching more jazz tutorial and learning more jazz piano techniques which you can use at the piano today. My name's Julian Bradley, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hallo, liebe Anlegerinnen und Anleger. Ja, ich bin es, Harry Weinfurt. Keine Sorgen, Sie sollen heute keine Preise erraten. Ich will Ihnen auch nichts verkaufen, ganz im Gegenteil.
Hi, in this session we're going to be looking at the triads that form the basis of harmony, and then we're going to work out how we work with the triads to look at a melody that we might want to harmonize. In other words, a melody that we want to choose chords for, so the whole thing sounds good.
Зима. Пора зимних модификаций, в одну из которых я уже давно запланировал поиграть в первый день зимы. Ночь перед Рождеством поведает нам о приключениях Меченого перед этим самым Рождеством. Надеюсь, что данное видео хоть немного разожжет в вас...
Нет, чтобы деньги были, да. Bien, bien. Thank you.